Scott Bradford. Let me tell you something about Scott before we bring him up. Scott is a renowned lecturer and author of To Preserve the Nation. He holds a PhD in constitutional law. He is founder and chairman of the Constitution Commemoration Foundation, Incorporated. His organizations foster increased understanding of the U.S. Constitution in the tradition of the Founding Fathers, and also encourage a return to the original intent of proper government and understand and practice at the time of America's founding. So please join with me in welcoming Scott Bradford.
Oh, that's easier on your eyes, isn't it? Now, just don't fall asleep. You know, while I'm bringing this up, I am so grateful. I see so many of my friends here that have been through so much with me, and it's so wonderful to have friends that care about these magnificent principles. When Gail asked me to speak, she said there was going to be a conference of a coalition that would be meeting together to try and help people understand why we shouldn't approach this of changing our Constitution in the methodology that's been suggested. Is this microphone adequate for everything, or do I have to get real close, or what's the deal? Everybody okay? Yeah, raise your hand if you can't hear me. It's immobile. I don't know how to do it. Oh, maybe I can do that one.
Bring the other one around.
Oh, there we go. Test 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so we don't get feedback. Okay, check 1. You good? Okay. And you know, as I put my program together, some of you that know me know that I have an extreme enthusiasm for being able to share knowledge. And I was happily building a program that had we had the one I delivered, was prepared to deliver, you would not leave at least until midnight tonight. So Gail prevailed upon me to dramatically shorten it. I wish there was time to share with you everything, because my first presentation was a deconstruction of every aspect of this effort to change the Constitution. We tried to cover every single aspect. And you know what you'll find with a lot of these people that are in favor of it is they use what they call ad hominem attacks. So if you're against them, they tell you you're stupid or you're fat or you're ugly or you're poor or something that has nothing whatsoever to do with the issue at hand. And when someone begins to do that, you know that they do not have a valid argument. But what I try to do is approach it through a methodology of using the actual words of the Founding Fathers, because a lot of people I find don't care what I think. But the fact of the matter is we can't do that tonight. So what I've done is I've focused some of the things, and there's learning modalities. And you can hear it, you can see it, or you can do it. Or maybe you can hear it and see it. Well, I can help you hear it and see it, but you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to go out and apply these things. Do not be intimidated. Do not feel like anybody is up there and any farther along in understanding than you are. I got a call in fact, Gail referred to it in her presentation. I got a call from a desperate constituent of one of the state senators. She says, "You've got to call my senator." And I've talked to him. And he says he'll talk to you. And you need to talk to him about this Constitution Convention stuff. So I called him. I introduced myself and I told him, "Senator, one of your constituents said you'll talk to me." And he says, "Yeah, I remember that conversation with her." And I says, "I'll talk to you as long as you want to talk to me. When you've heard enough, you tell me. Because I could talk to you all night long about this. There is literally that much information." Interestingly enough, he gave me about 57 minutes, I think. He says, "You've convinced me. I'm unequivocally opposed to this proposal to change our Constitution." And he was solid in that, wasn't he, Gail? He voted with us on this thing. So sometimes we have people that are ignorant, they just don't know. Some people are deceived. And some people are just plain deceivers. We need to seek out those that are ignorant and deceived and get them straightened out, and sometimes we might even win over a deceiver, but I think they're a lot harder to find, and at least they're a lot harder to win over, but because they've got some kind of skin in the game. On this, well, let me do this so that we don't have a big distraction of all the other slides you got to look at. You'll start counting slides and you won't be keeping up. How about that? You see better anyway now. I say that this is a highly organized, cleverly disguised, and powerfully promoted effort to hold a convention. And it is the most, in my opinion, most dangerous threat to our republic that has happened in the entire history of our nation. And that includes what happened clear back in the 1860s. This is more insidious than that, because this could unequivocally change what they could go back to in those days. So, a convention to change our Constitution. I was, as I said, going to talk about all the delusions of the way they were approaching this, but we won't talk about, well, we'll touch on a few of them. There are literally dozens of prominent individuals and organizations that are calling for a change of the Constitution, and they do obfuscate the intent and danger by different names. A lot of us call it a Constitution Convention, which is the most appropriate and correct name, and we'll see that definition very shortly. But they're calling some of them Article 5 conventions, a convention of the states, conference of the states, amendments convention, and there's a lot of great efforts that are made to nuance differences between these names. But truly, don't be deceived. Each one is only a slightly modified twist to change our Constitution. Now here's what Black's Law Dictionary says is a Constitution Convention. This is the definitive legal lexicon. This is where everybody goes to see what is what in legal terminology. This is right out of their written document, and it says, a Constitution Convention, a duly constituted assembly of delegates or representatives of the people of a state or nation for the purpose of framing, revising, or amending its Constitution. Whoops, there's Article 5. Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution provides that a constitutional convention may be called on application of the legislatures of 2/3 of the states. Oh my goodness. So summarizing all the arguments for any type of convention is that who's they? Well, it's them that are in office. It's thems of us that are asking them to. It's maybe us. We've found the enemy, and it is us. We're violating the Constitution as a people. The only reason and way that our elected representatives can violate the Constitution is because we allow them to. And sometimes that's out of ignorance, sometimes complacency, and sometimes we comply and we want it. But they're violating the Constitution, and so we must change it. That violates all logic, reason, and intelligence. The problem's not with the Constitution. There's nothing wrong with the Constitution. They've simply stopped applying it. And so often when I talk to those that are in favor of a Constitution Convention, which by definition is what any of those that we mentioned earlier, the Article 5, the Convention of States, the Conference of States, the Amendment Convention, because they are duly authorized representatives and delegates that are called together to change the Constitution. That is by definition a Constitution Convention, in spite of everything they'll tell you. I really truly believe they do this obfuscation, calling it these different names, for a lot of reasons. One is to falsely impress you that it's not nearly as dangerous as a convention could be. Another thing would be, oh, well, the states are in charge. See, it's a convention of states, so it really isn't anything that could turn bad. Well, it obfuscates it, because by definition it is a Constitution Convention. And all they've done is stop applying our Constitution, and that's why we have problems. And I would submit to you that all the problems, all the challenges, all of the oh-ain't it awfuls that face our nation today, that they're trying to change the Constitution for, could be resolved by reapplying the Constitution. And so they say, well, we got to apply Article 5 to do that. No. Why don't you apply Article 6? Article 6, Clause 3 says what? Everybody that holds office has to take an oath to uphold the Constitution. Holy cow. You mean if they did that, we'd be okay? We don't need to put the Constitution at risk. They don't even look at the rest of the Constitution. See, the limits and bounds that are imposed upon the national government through the whole entire rest of the Constitution are completely ignored today. We have a framework, a skeletal frame, maybe I'd call it, left of what the founders gave us. We've almost wholeheartedly and completely abandoned it, and we could talk all night about that. Let's go back to Article 6. that oath that they took, that sacred oath, where they imprecated the vengeance of God if they disavowed it. And that's right in the definition that was given by the founders. When you take an oath, you imprecate the vengeance of God if you don't live up to it, even if they don't say, "So help me God." Well, the founders never suggested that you change the Constitution if it were violated. They only said it was supposed to be changed if it was defective. Article 5 wasn't there just so that they can dance around and do all sorts of new things anytime they get an idea that they want to. It was there if there were found to be shortages in that Constitution. Here's what George Washington said: "If in the opinion of the people the distribution or modification of the constitutional powers be in any particular wrong, let it be corrected by an amendment in the way which the Constitution designates, but let there be no change by usurpation. For though this in one instance may be the instrument of good, it is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed." What are they doing now? They usurp it. They don't change it. George Washington, in another place in his farewell address, said that it's sacredly obligatory upon all until changed by an authentic act. That authentic act is the amendment process. You cannot change it by guess and by golly and by tradition and by just happenstance. You can't do that. It violates the very oath that they took for that. So the problem's not with the Constitution. There's nothing wrong with that. We've just stopped applying it. Okay? So the solution is that we've got to go back to the original intent and not modify or replace it. So many of those, has been touched upon a little bit this evening, is the fact that the people say, and I get this with people, I've been to luncheons and dinners and after dinner speeches and get-togethers and conferences and all sorts of things. People have come to my table and talked to me, and it's just amazing how many people will bring this up. They say, "Oh, quit worrying. Bradley, you're a worrywart. There's no chance of a bad amendment being adopted because all the proposed amendments have got to be reviewed and ratified by 3/4 of the states. That's 38 of the states before it becomes part of the Constitution. You can't possibly believe that 38 states would choose the wrong thing, can you? Well, it's been mentioned earlier, but this is a reiteration of that in the actual wording that was given to those that came to the Constitution Convention of 1787. When that was called by Congress, it was called for the sole and express purpose of revising the Articles of Confederation. That was the Constitution at the time, thereby rendering the federal Constitution adequate to the exigencies of government and the preservation of the Union. So they were there called solely and only to amend the Constitution. That's what it means. Revise means to review, alter, and amend, out of Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary. Noah Webster, by the way, was one of the founding fathers. He was in Philadelphia during that 1787 convention. He wasn't in the convention, but he met with the founders often. He was a founding father. He was the one that wrote the first American dictionary that was published in 1828. But that's the terms that they used. They knew that they were called together to review, alter, and amend the existing Constitution. So, in spite of that charge to simply amend that Constitution, they recognized that they were legally authorized to set aside the Constitution and create an entirely new Constitution. And that is exactly what they did. As soon as they met, now think for a moment. We might have a Constitution Convention for one reason or another at this point, but let's suppose they do one that's just as smooth as glass and everything turns out and everybody looks at me and says, "Bradley, what are you worried about? Everything's cool. It didn't happen like you said." They're getting us ready and they'll set us up, and I guarantee there will come a time, and it may be in the first one, when some silver-tongued devil, and I won't try to name that individual, but it will probably be someone you can think of right now, will get up and say, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are met in a most amazing moment in history. We have before us the opportunity to correct things that have been vexing this nation for decades and even centuries. We would be remiss as the representatives of the people to not take full advantage of that, and I move that the rules be suspended and we open the Constitution for discussion of any and all subject. So moved, all in favor, aye. Ayes have it." It takes just a few sentences to set aside the rules, and that fake convention they had last year that Janine talked about, where they brought forth, 6 proposed amendments? They suspended their own rules to facilitate what they were trying to prove. And these were hand-picked people. There was just over 100 of them. I don't remember exactly how many there were. Just over 100 of their same ilk, and they still wrestled in the mud with each other for a period of time before they decided they were going to come forth with 6 proposed amendments. Holy cow, I thought they only wanted 1 or 2. You know, it's over the years I've collected a lot of proposed amendments, and a few years ago I stopped doing it. But at the time I had 52 active amendments that were proposed, that were out there. And it was everything from get rid of the Second Amendment to get rid of the Electoral College to canonize abortion to canonize Obamacare, et cetera, et cetera. There are all sorts of things. Those that bring the proposed amendments to you try to sing to the choir that they know that you're going to want to hear. And the Utah's, for some reason or another, I don't quite understand it, viewed by many as being a fiscally conservative state. It is not. But the fact of the matter is they think you want term limits and you want a balanced budget. By the way, I've collected, and I've got a stack of them here in my folder right here. Oh, probably I've got a dozen in there right now.